2 blocks in a bolster, 1 strap. If you need a blanket, grab a blanket. Hey, Chandra, that's my blanket. And then we're going to salad grab it, right? True that. And then coming down nice and slow. Pushing into our feet, lift up our pelvis, give it a little wiggle back and forth, bring the pelvis down onto the floor, arms out beside you, palms facing up. Let's allow our knees to touch, and let's heel toe the feet apart. Pigeon toe the feet so that the baby toe edge of the foot is nice and straight. Let your shoulders melt over the bolster, close your eyes, and just start to focus on your natural breathing. See if you can feel your nostrils, either with your mind's eye, or you could even just really lightly place your fingers on your nostrils. And imagine you could blow up your nostrils, almost like there was a balloon inside your nostrils, like you could expand them. And sometimes you kind of see a bull and he expands his nostrils. Sometimes it helps me to visualize that I've got a little marble or a grape inside my nose and I'm trying to expand my nostrils to unwedge that object. Imagine you could broaden your nostrils from the opening all the way up into the skull. Using your mind, start to slow down the breath. When you think that your lungs are empty, using your abdominal and intercostal muscles between your ribs, just squeeze your body, almost like it's a sponge, getting rid of any stale carbon dioxide that's in your lungs. And then on the opposite end, when you think you're full, just taking a little bit of a deeper sip of air before you start your exhalation. Let's take 10 more big, beautiful breaths just like that. With each exhalation, allowing ourselves to let go and release any remaining stress, strain, or pressure. With each inhalation, inviting in a sense of peace, calm, and relaxation. And those 10 breaths are complete. Returning once again to your natural breathing. Taking your fingers, holding onto your shoulders, lifting those elbows so they're at shoulders height, reaching with the elbows, and starting with nice big, slow circles. See if you can get those elbows to touch in front of the chest, looking for a little bit of symmetry. And change direction with the circles. And then stopping with the circles, elbows at a shoulder's height, open the elbows, close the elbows, keeping those elbows at a shoulder's height. Inhale as you open, exhale as you close. And then elbows at a shoulder's height, like a jumping jack. Bring them to the side ribs, bring them back to a shoulder's height. Exhale down to the side ribs, inhale back up. And then letting those arms come beside you, palms facing up, let the shoulders melt. Let's heel toe the feet in. Feet on the floor, lift up your pelvis. Give that pelvis a little wiggle, bring your pelvis back down. Knees and feet touch. Open up your knees, close your knees. And so with the soles of the feet firmly planted on the floor, we're just gonna open and close those knees. We're just working with our breath. Inhale as we open, exhale as we close. And then opening up our knees, we can stay here in a creeper pose, which is more strengthening. If we want more stretch, then we bring the soles of the feet together and we let the knees come apart. But if at any point that pulls really deep into the groins, we go back to soles of the feet on the floor, knees a little bit closer. Let your shoulders melt. Once again, broaden your nostrils and start to focus on that nice, big, beautiful breath in and out through your nostrils. If you want it to be a little bit more into the shoulders, you can bring your arms up a little bit higher, but we don't really want the elbows higher than the shoulders. Gently pressing the soles of the feet to one another. I like to visualize that I've got a little stick in the backs of my knees, and the backs of my knees are pulling towards my kneecaps. And I want to get a really strong connection with my outer trochanter area, which is the diagonal from the groin, and I want to lift my outer trochanters up to my inner groins, and then I want to lengthen from inner groin to inner knee. And as I do that, I think strongly of closing my legs from the outside, which actually allows me to open up my hips. And so I think that the inside of the leg is trying to open as the outside of the leg is trying to close, and that's going to create the resistance to release the groins and let me slip further into the pose if I want to go further into the pose. Remembering you can go back to the first pose, snow plow, or a creeper pose anytime you like. We're going to interlace our fingers, right hand on top of left, right up to the webbing. We're gonna bend our elbows so that our elbows and our wrists are of an equal height. Hands are gonna be right over the sternum. So the trick to this posture is to get a really solid pull. So if those hands are like a guitar string, they're super taut, right? Elbows remain at a shoulder's height, palms start facing you. Relax your shoulders away from your ears. And then without moving the elbows, we're gonna flip the palms to us and away from us. And those wrists are as high as the elbows. And then flipping those palms away from us, we're gonna straighten and bend the elbows. Inhale as we straighten, exhale as we bend. And really finding a connection of the back rib cage pushing into the bolster as we do this. And then straighten your arms to hold. And I want you to think Ferris wheel. So you're gonna take those hands like it's a carriage in a Ferris wheel, and they're gonna stay at a shoulder's height, and we're gonna do biggest circles we can. So we go elbow, wrist, wrist, elbow, to make these nice big circles right over the shoulders, and we try and keep those hands level. And then we're gonna change direction with those circles. Trying to keep the rest of the body perfectly still if we can. And stopping with the circles, straightening out your arms, relax your shoulders, really lean into the back rib cage as you bring your arms towards your ears. Really nice and slow. Big, huge breaths. Big inhales, big exhales. And again, broaden those nostrils as best you can. And eventually you're going to be able to keep those nostrils broad as you continue to breathe in and out through the nose. Let's see if we've got 10 more big, slow, smooth, even breaths. Maybe even choosing to match a mantra, a vision statement to every single one of those breaths. When those 10 breaths are complete, bringing your arms back up, bend your elbows, flip your palms, release those arms beside you. Let the shoulders melt over the bolster, taking a few deep breaths here. then drawing your knees together, walk your feet so they're hips distance apart, pick up your pelvis, give it a little wiggle, walk your feet away from you until your legs are at a 90-degree bend in the knee, dig your heels in, lift up the soles of the feet. Get your big toe mans and baby toe mans equal distance from the knees, and then pull your heels towards you to engage the hamstrings. Broaden your nostrils, find some big, beautiful breaths. And then interlacing your fingers, left hand on top of right, thumbs tap, hands over the sternum, curl those elbows apart. So the trick is to use as much force as you can to almost get like a tautness in your wrists and your fingers. But the fingers are super strong so that the arms don't come flying apart. And then you're going to flip the palms to you and away from you. And try to stay right on the center of your heels and continuously pulling those heels towards the butt. Flip the palms away from you. Inhale to straighten the elbows. Exhale to bend the elbows. Inhale to straighten. Exhale to bend. And then straighten those arms to hold. Keep your shoulders relaxed, and like a Ferris wheel, make circles with your hands. Just exploring that range, really feeling your back nice and still on the bolster. Changing direction with those circles. Stopping with the circles, straighten your arms, relax your shoulders, keep your neck neutral as you bring those arms towards your ears. Not just letting those arms fall back, but keeping them with your ears. Push into the tips of the thumbs, try and keep your pinky fingers engaged. Use all of your fingertips to push into the back of the opposite hand. So you can get a mini micro bend in your knuckles, even if it's just in your mind's eye. And then broaden those nostrils just like a bull would. Big inhales, big exhales. And once you find the rhythm of the breath, feel free to add a mantra, a seed of intention with each and every one of those breaths. And the trick to mantra is to use it and to be consistent. The full moon is a time to reflect on the mantra from last month, the month before, whatever you're working on, and just kind of check in if you're actually doing it. When we first start to make changes in our life, basic is better. For example, drink more water, drink more water, drink more water. Right? That could be your new moon intention. And if the full moon comes along and you haven't drank more water, then you don't really change it. You stick with that unless you've decided that you don't actually need to drink more water. Maybe you need to drink, say you were saying water and vitamins, water and vitamins, water and vitamins. Then maybe you come full moon, you're like, I'm not doing it. Maybe you cut it in half and you say just water, 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 water. Maybe your intention this season is squat, squat, squat. Or maybe it's world peace, world peace, world peace, right? Whatever you feel like you want to create. with a nice smooth inhalation, press into your rib cage, bring your arms back up and over, bend your elbows, flip your palms, release those arms beside you. Let the shoulders melt. Walk your feet a little bit closer, and just relax those shoulders. And then picking up the pelvis, giving the pelvis a little wiggle from side to side. Move the hips to the left, roll off to the right, push yourself up. We're going to move the bolsters and the blocks out of the way, and we're going to come onto our backs. Okay, so if you have a blanket, it's nice to have a blanket underneath your pelvis, but you don't need it. But do have your strap handy. Knees together, feet together, make a nice C with your spine. Come down one vertebra at a time. Look out, Johnny Money. Take your strap, and if it's not already rolled up, roll it up nicely. Now, if you're doing this out and about and you don't have a strap, you can use a pair of socks or like a tea towel or whatever you've got, right? But I want to have basically what I would call a spacer for the back of the knee. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to fold my knee so that that strap is giving me some space right in the back of the knee. And I do like the Cadillac straps better because I can get it kind of more this angle, but whatever angle works as long as you're getting space there. A stick works too. Then you're going to interlace your fingers, right hand on top of left over that shin, and you're going to take the leg away from you and you're going to find a lumbar curve. So I think most of us know, but I started asana, like this type of physical practice, because I blew my knee downhill racing on the ski hill. And so I have a lot of little knee tricks that keep me skiing. And the number one trick that I found that works for me is neutral pelvis, right? So I can do this entire routine with an imprint, and I'm not going to get the same release in the hip that's going to make my knee happy, right? So the trick is to do less. Really do less if you're experiencing some kind of fatigue in the knee, and really sustain a still and neutral pelvis, okay? That's how we get the healing, is to do less and to be still in the pelvis. So see if you can find that nice neutral pelvis by lengthening the pubic bone away from the navel, by moving the hip flexors at an angle towards the butt. And if you want to go deeper, you can straighten out that left leg. But if I'm working on stabilizing my knee, I'm going to dig my left heel in and lift up the back of my left knee. Good. And then we're just going to start with drawing little circles with that right knee without moving the pelvis. And you can even put your hand on the kneecap, and you could have one hand on the pelvis. Just to remind yourself that the number one trick here, the hack, is to not move the pelvis. And then change direction with those circles. Again, if that pelvis is moving, bend the left knee, do smaller circles. Some of us might be able to go bigger with those circles. And then stopping with the circles. If you've left the hands off the knee, bring the hands back onto the knee. Now really think back bend as you pull that right leg towards you. Lift your elbows, pull your elbows apart so that they're taut, right? There's no wrinkles in the wrist. And then we're going to take that knee and we're going to take it over to the left side. So I think of my leg bone as a joystick, and I think of my pelvis as the console, and I want to move the joystick in the console, but I want to keep the console stable like it's on a table. Now lean into your right outer booty. Right? So that outer trochanter area that's diagonal from the groin, imagine that there's a chair at a diagonal and you can push into that chair. And not all of this needs to make sense, right? I've done this crap since I was 13, so it's very detailed. And then maybe you want to go and push a little bit harder with your right hand, and you want to think about your knee pushing back into that hand. That's how we get the groin to release, and the groin is responsible for a lot of tugging into the inner knee, right? So if we feel our knees when we're going down, then it's usually or often something to do with the groin. So you're going to push with your hand, and the knee is going to push back until it releases, and when it releases, you're just going to move it up and down a little bit. Just teeny tiny movements. Remember, the number one ingredient to this recipe is still pelvis, slower and smaller movements. So I'm moving so smally, whatever, you get it, so that you can barely see that I'm moving. That's why I get these little catches. Good. And then once that releases, I might go a little bit further, right? Foot's active, there's no rotation in the hip. Once I hit a spot where I'm like, oh yeah, that's it. Then I push my knee into my hand pushes back into my knee. And I think of the whole leg opening. So from inner ankle to inner knee, inner groin is opening, right? It's trying to get open, whereas my hand and my outer leg is keeping the leg still. And then once that releases, which means the stretch softens in the groin, then I can go up and down again with that knee, just tiny movements. Right? Does anybody feel lost? Do we all feel it in our groin? Anybody not feel it in our groin?
I feel it more in my piriformis.
What's that?
I feel it more in my piriformis.
That's fine. Yeah. But do you feel it in your groin at all? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're gonna feel it where you're tight, but I'm just, if you didn't feel it in your groin, I'd be curious. I'd want you to find the muscles more. And then just find a sweet spot and let's do the teeniest, tiniest little circles. Itty bitty baby circles. And then itty bitty baby circles the other way. Teeny tiny. So Katerina, tiny, like smaller than you thought ever possible. So you barely see those movements. And then find a sweet spot and just hold and breathe into it. Slide your hands up onto your kneecap and feel like you could push your humerus bone, not your humerus bone, your femur, your leg bone, into your hip. And it's almost like a burn sensation. And if your feet are still active, it might burn all the way down into your feet, outer hip. Then dig your heels in, and without moving them, pull your heels towards your booty. Just like we did in the opening sequence. And then just big, huge belly breaths into that hip. With each inhale, you want to feel that belly expanding. And with each exhale, you want to feel that belly gently contracting. Still injecting that leg bone into the hip at a slight angle. Take 5 more big belly breaths, just like that. When those 5 breaths are complete, slowly bring that right leg so that the knee is right over the hip, and then nice and slow, take that right leg out to the right, okay? But not as far as you can. And then use your hand to push into your knee pushes into your hand, and sit your butt into a chair, fire up your foot. So I've got a range where I can bring my knee way out, and that's not what I'm trying to do here. We already did a groin stretch, right? We want to get a release. So we only go to half of what we can. We use our hand to push into the knee, and then the inner leg again pushes back into the hand. And we're going to breathe really deep into our belly, into that right hip. So full moons are emotional times, so this is a lot of sort of intricate, deep hip work. So we want to kind of be mindful that we try not to take any emotional release that we might get from doing this deep hip work outside the room, right? You might feel the emotion, but you don't want to be reactive to it. Not a good night to go have cocktails. Or just one cocktail, not 6. Fingers come to the inside of the knee, and you're going to pull with the fingers, and now the outer knee is going to push back. And again, we're not at our full range here. That's really important. So if we have, we want to do deep healing work, we do half of what we can do. Level pelvis, give me 5 more big breaths right into that hip. And then bring that knee so it's in line with the hip socket. Bend the left leg, externally rotate so you hook your right ankle on the outside of the left knee, and you're gonna open and close that hip. So keeping the pelvis level here, again, there's no movement in the pelvis. That's the magic. And then take that knee as far away from you as you can. You're gonna take your strap and you're gonna fold it into half 3 times, right? So you fold it in half, no, just twice will do actually, and then fold it in half again. So it's a little bit wider than a shoulder's distance. And then we're gonna take it behind the left hamstring, and then with the thumbs pointing to us, we're gonna have our strap behind that hamstring. And then we're gonna bend our knee over that strap. Now, I want your thighs that your knee is right over your hip, foot is floating but active, right knee's working away from you. And then you're gonna pull as hard as you can with the strap, and the leg is gonna push back into that strap. But it's not gonna come closer to you, because what we're looking for here is neutral pelvis. Other leg, Marguerite. Other leg, John. So the knee has to be right over the hip here. And one of the magic tricks to getting into that outer hip piriformis is to have the ankle so it just hooks on the outside of that knee. And then if you have the magic, you can use the ankle to traction the leg. Does that make sense? You know how we had our hand there before? Yeah. And then you just think, I'm gonna take that right knee away from me. You're pulling with the strap and the leg is pushing. So we want the strap on this leg. Yeah, there we go, that'll be better. Big inhales, big exhales. If you need to make the strap longer, you do. And then imagine that there's a big heavy weight on that left kneecap, and you're gonna pull that left kneecap really deep down into the hip. And then big, huge breaths. So one of the things I think that is most important lesson when healing is we're not going to full range. We go to about half range, we hang out, we find the muscles, and we breathe. Because if we go to our full range, which is kind of like driving as fast as you can, you have less control to change things, right? So whatever is the, fatigued part of the body, or the, the injured or the tight or the whatever weak part of the body, it's not going to get any change if we're doing as much as we can. It's just like when you're sick, you should stay at home in bed and drink chicken soup. Big inhales, big exhales. You're just really finding all those micro muscles. If you can't find the stretch here, it's because the muscles aren't firing. It's not because you need to go deeper. Does anyone feel like they can't find the stretch here and they need help? Good. Keep that lumbar curve if that's at all possible for you. And let's take 5 more big belly breaths before we go further. When those 5 breaths are complete, if this feels like enough of a stretch for you, you stay here. If you're choosing to go deeper, you pull the leg to you. You can even interlace your fingers behind that left thigh to go deeper. There is an option to imprint the low back at this stage, but you want to think about the muscles of a back bend, like you're trying to hold a neutral pelvis even though you imprint. Relax the shoulders. Use your hands to physically draw that left femur into the hip and slowly allow those legs to come to you, but you want to keep those muscles of the legs trying to get away from you. So it's like a tug of war. The inside of the leg and the quad are trying to get away from you. The outside of the leg and the hamstring are trying to come to you. And then, you know how we talk about the groin moving to the outer trochanter? On that right leg, Like there's a hot knife on your inner groin, cut it to your outer trochanter. Does that make sense? So yeah, right here, but without moving the pelvis. It's like your groin pulls to that space. It's a good one for you too. So I'm gonna put my foot here, and then you're gonna move your groin with, there you go. You getting it? You feel that?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is where I want you to push your groin into. And I'm not gonna grab your groin. Use your imagination, I'm not that teacher. Don't wanna get canceled, although those people probably deserve to be canceled. Especially if they don't ask permission. Let's go 10 big breaths here. I just think of a strap in my groin and it's pulling my inner groin to my outer trochanter. Then I get this incredible release on my outer hip, which also can sometimes pull into the groin, right? Or into the knee. Especially skiing, I find that that gets really heavy on me. And then release, let your foot come down nice and slow. Draw your right knee towards your navel, uncross, straighten out that right leg. Just hold it there for a moment, point and flex your foot. If it's hard to stay here, you can bend your knee, right? Try and keep that neutral pelvis here if you can. And then point your foot without your knee moving. Draw big, slow circles. So 0 movement in the knee. And then change direction with those circles. And then stopping with those circles, flex your foot, sole of the foot flat, curl your toes like you're holding onto a pencil, point your foot like a dancer, flip your toes back to you. Flex, curl, point, and flip, flex, curl, point, and flip. Beautiful. Bend that knee, interlace your fingers over the shin, and just pull that leg in for a quick hip flexor release. Give me 5 big breaths. Think of a little back bend. Ankle, knee, and hip in a nice straight line. And then release, let that foot come down. So you can either do an internal rotation with the knees touching, feet apart, if you feel like that's your challenge. You can do an external rotation with a creeper pose or a cobbler pose if you feel like that's where you're most challenged. And then just take some big, beautiful belly breaths. Start by feeling the difference between the right side of your body and the left side of your body. Notice where the breath, the energy, the prana flows more freely. Broaden your nostrils, slow down that breath, smooth it out. Take 5 more breaths here. Feel free to plant a seed of intention with each and every one of those 5 breaths. When those 5 breaths are complete, go back to neutral legs, take your strap, roll it back up, and put it in behind the back of your knee. Maybe imprinting and arching a few times while you're rolling. FYI, this is how we put the straps away. They're nicely, tightly rolled up, neatly. I'm not particular at all. And then place it behind your knee in the same fashion. Bend the knee over it. Interlace your fingers, left hand on top of right, and start by taking that knee as far away from you as you can. And if you want to straighten out that right leg, do, but only if you've got a neutral pelvis. Dig your heel in and pull your heel towards you as you lift up the back of the right knee a little bit. And then make little circles with your knee and just notice where it's tight. Little baby circles without the pelvis moving. And again, you could use one hand on the pelvis, one hand on the knee if that's helpful for you. If you haven't figured out a stable pelvis yet. We want to try and do our legs the same, so if we straighten on one side, we straighten on the other side. Other way with the circles. When we work on the hips, we want to focus on a nice belly breath. And then interlacing your fingers, left hand on top of right. You can pull the leg a little bit to you, but again, the magic recipe is neutral pelvis. Now take that left leg over to the right side, and eventually you get a catch. And then once you have a catch, you're going to push with your left hand, and you're going to think about the whole inside of the leg. So from inner groin to inner knee to inner ankle to big toe mound is all opening. Trying to get to the left, and then the outside of the leg, with the help of the hand, is trying to close. And after a few breaths, you'll find it's released, and then stay in that position and just go up and down a little bit. You'll probably find there's a tight spot. Take some breaths, maybe hold that tight spot, and then move a little bit further to the right. And then once you hit, again, you push with the hand, you push with the leg. Just find that release. Once you find the release, you might find that you want to do a few little motions here. Breathing deeply into the belly. There's zero rotation on that right leg. That's really important that the right knee, right heel stays pointing to the sky. Again, you can play with it a little bit. I like to think of that outer trochanter area pulling away from the groin, like the groin is pulling into that space. Sometimes I visualize an arrow coming into my inner groin and moving everything towards that outer hip. And the outer hip does push back, but to get that groin to release, sometimes it helps to lengthen the groin to the outer trochanter. And then eventually, when you feel like you've freed it up a little bit, use your hands to inject the knee, the leg bone into the hip. Like a stick into a marshmallow. Not too hard. And then do little circles. And then little circles the other way. Teeny and tiny as you can. Leg is over to that left side if that's, right side if that's comfortable. You got the spacer in the back of the knee. Then eventually finding another spot to hold. Find that traction, that push, push. Breathe into it. Then gradually let that right hand come onto the right hip, and slow, 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 let the inner leg win the pushing war. And you're not going to full range, you're going to half range. So move really slowly and just allow that knee and leg to open up, 0 rotation, and stop at your half range. And then breathe there, big, beautiful breaths. Just focus on where you had maximum sensation of stretch. Think about breathing into that space. Keeping the lumbar curve. Let's go 5 big belly breaths into that area. And then let that left knee come back over the hip, bend your knee, place the sole of the right foot onto the floor, externally rotate, hook that left ankle on the outside of the right knee. That right foot can be as close as is comfortable, pelvis is level, and just open and close that left hip, again without the pelvis moving. And then let that left knee go as far away from you as is comfortable. Let's start by finding the hamstring on that right leg by folding our strap in half, and then in half again will work for most people. Taking the strap behind the hamstring, getting the knee right over the hip, right? So we're doing a little less. I like to have my thumbs pointing to me. And then pulling as hard as you can on the strap as the quad pushes into the strap. Moving that left knee as far away from you as comfortable, and you want to think about pulling that right knee, right femur down into the hip. And then just breathing here. Now here we definitely want to try and have a lumbar curve. And then just great big belly breaths. And that 90-degree angle where like the quad is at a 90-degree angle with the hip flexor is really therapeutic, right? So the body, it's interesting, right? In my experience, right? Like it's habits, right? So the body has a habit of an injury. So I had a habit of a knee injury, right? And so if I, play hard, then I'm gonna start to feel that habit creeping back in. Right? Like if I put, hard things, just like if I, have a hard thing going in my life, I haven't smoked in, 25 years, I crave a cigarette, right? It's the craziest thing, right? So it's like that with injuries, right? So for example, I had a ski injury, so when I ski or I hike or I wear high heels and go dancing, I start to feel those muscles pulling into my knee. I don't necessarily get knee pains, thank goodness, knock on wood, but I feel it moving into that space, right? And so for me to release it so that it doesn't turn into knee pain the next time I go wear high heels or the next day that I ski or hike or bike or do whatever it is that I'm pushing myself really hard at, I have to do basics and less, right? So then I would go back to, even though I can do this no problem, right? I wouldn't even dream of going past this 90-degree angle at the hip flexor for at least a huge chunk of my warm-up. And I'd really find all the muscles and just get them to release and find that resistance we talked about, right? Going the opposite direction. And then once you find those muscles and you feel like it's released a little bit, then you ditch the strap and you can go a little further. But you still don't go likely to your most extreme. So you pull the leg in a bit, but you make sure that those resistant muscles are firing, because if you lose those resistance muscles, you're gonna fall into the habit, right? So if I'm craving a cigarette, my resistance is to stay at home, to not drink cocktails and go to the bar, whatever it is that makes me actually smoke. Not that I ever do, but it's, just an example. So that's my resistance, right? If I go to the bar, get wasted with people that smoke, then there's a way more big chance that I'm gonna smoke, right? So it's the same goes with injury. We wanna make sure that we are supporting the muscles that are the opposite of the muscle that's tweaky. I don't know if that makes sense, but basically what I'm trying to say is you go slow, you do less, and you make sure you're using the resistance muscles. And so here, particularly because, outer hip and groin have a huge factor with knee staff, so we want to think of the relationship between those two to each other. So you think of the groin moving to the outer hip in this case, right? And just gets right in there. Whereas if you went to your deepest, you wouldn't even know where your inner groin was. You'd be like, holy shit, this is so deep, right? And you wouldn't be able to move that or find that. And it takes a while to find these little things, right? You get it? A little bit? I can't feel it. I can feel it on him, but he's got really strong muscles there. With you, I want you to visualize, how we do that towel dry, and then pull it to my foot. There you go, a little bit more. Yeah. Big, beautiful breaths. And so you pull this in. There you go, now find it. You getting it? It's right into the piriformis, hey? You feel it?
Yeah.
Just go 5 more big belly breaths. It's just like you're stretching into that outer trochanter area. It's like it's growing bigger. And then when those 5 breaths are complete, you're going to release. You're going to let that right foot come down. We're going to draw that left knee towards our navel. Unwind. Get that knee right over the hip. Open up the back of that knee. Point and flex. And again, if it's pulling, you just bend your knee. And then point your foot and draw nice big, slow circles. Change direction with the circles. Does anyone here have they never ever felt their knees? I'm just curious. Like if you're an active sport type, walking even, just going to the beach. Has anyone gotten through life without their knees getting tweaked? It's interesting, hey? And then flex, curl, point, and flip. Flex, curl, point, and flip. Flex, curl, point, and flip. And just hold there and breathe. So now you can go back to this video and be like, when my knees are starting to tweak, I'm going to do that ridiculously long knee release video. Bend your knee, foot comes down onto the floor, little imprint and arch. And then we're going to take our strap long and we're going to put it over the soles of our feet, and we're going to have our feet at hips distance apart, and we're going to take our quad to a 90. And some of us, right, particularly those people that can't do legs up the wall, with like your butt right at the wall, you can bend your knees or you can take your legs further away from you. Either or. But we want to have those thighs at a 90. We're going to pull down on the strap and we're going to take those feet at hips distance apart. Just rock your head a little bit from side to side. Make sure that's comfortable. Big, beautiful breaths. And learning a 90 is a good one, right? Yeah, now find a little bit of a back bend. Yeah. And a little bit of a back bend. Yeah, there you go. That's coming, right? Yeah, nice. Nice deep, full breaths right into the belly. Nice. And then you want to think again of just kind of like pulling down, bringing those legs into the pelvis. There we go. If you can, a little bit, yeah, bingo. You feel that difference? Does it change it for you? Okay. So the trick is to not bring those legs closer as we do the IT band releases, okay? And then the other trick is don't go quickly where you can go. Do less. So bring your thighs to touch. Take your left foot out of the strap. And if it pulls into your back at all, you can bend your left knee, put your left foot on the floor. Otherwise, slowly, slowly lower that left leg. Don't let that right leg come closer. Nice. Dig the heel in, bend the knee a little bit, and then we're going to internally and externally rotate that right leg like a screwdriver. So moving it right from the head of the femur. Just breathing into that space. And then stopping with it neutral. Again, don't pull it in. Keep it right over that hip. That's how we get the maximum release. And then we're going to take that right leg over to the left side. And then we take the strap, and I can go super deep, but on a day that I'm trying to release, I'm not going to go that deep, right? And then I'm going to pull with the strap, and I'm going to pull that leg into the hip, and I'm going to think about pulling my groin to my outer trochanter, and my outer trochanters move to my groins. So we do a lot of quad to hamstring, hamstring to quad. We do a lot of front groin to back groin. Let's think about the diagonal here. And then I'm going to use my hand with the right strap, and I'm going to pull a little harder, and I'm going to push my leg into that strap. Just a little bit, so I get that open the book of the leg. And I might even choose to go up and down a little bit, but tiny, tiny micro movement here. And then find a little sweet spot, hold and breathe. Maybe you go a little deeper, but you're not going your max. It's that 50% space where you can find those resisting muscles that we get the change to release the muscle that's triggered. I'm just breathing here. So my strap is kind of the same shape of my leg. It's like a pant leg. And then I'm pulling at that angle. So I'm not pulling straight, I'm pulling at an angle. So I'm injecting my femur into my hip. Let's go 5 more big breaths right into that hip socket. And if I'm doing this at home, right, if I'm working, you know, like if I've had a big active day and I'm like, oh, if I don't fix this, it's going to be a problem, I would do this right next to a wall, and I would push my foot into that imaginary wall. But I wouldn't push it my deepest. I really want to make that clear, right, when my body's saying, woo, listen to me. I want to do less, like half of what I can do. And then when those breaths are complete, slow as you can, really pull that leg into your hip as you slowly come back to center. And then you're going to slowly go out the other way. And again, my depth is here. When I'm trying to be very, very, like, you know, therapeutic to my legs and my knees and my hips, I go here, right? So you can see the difference between that and that. And then I imagine that my strap is a pant leg, and then I'm going to pull that leg bone deep into the hip, and then the longer I hold this and breathe, the more likely my knee's going to release. And for me, it takes like, we're doing like an hour and a bit. We did the breathing to start, but I can usually do it in about 30 minutes. But I literally do nothing but these routines for the whole 30 minutes, 30, 40 minutes, right? So you feel how that hip moved. So the trick is to keep the pelvis level. That's #1 ingredient to this recipe. I'm just going to put my foot here if that's okay. I just want to think of a weight right there. Does anybody feel like they're not getting it? And then bring it back to center. Good. Release the strap, bend the knee, interlace your fingers, pull that leg in. Little half wind maneuver. And then release. Let's go back to both feet in the strap, and let's find those thighs at a 90-degree angle. And so again, it's often legs further away from you than you think. Nice lumbar curve. If you felt your pubic bone, it's not at all higher than your hip bones. And you could drive a little mini dinky car through your low back. Now, with the strap on your feet, feet to hips distance apart, pull those legs apart, but the strap is there. So I'm going to push the baby toe edge of my foot as hard as I can into that strap. And then I'm going to think about not only the feet pulling apart, but the ankles pulling apart, but the knees pulling apart, but the groins pulling apart. Nice big belly breaths here.
It's hard to do.
Yeah. The outer muscles are often more dominant, right?
Do your groins want you to do an external rotation? Like when you say pull your groins apart, is that what I'm preventing?
I don't get that
Like,
question.
so when you say pull your groins apart, I try to do that, my feet want to do this.
Yeah, no, you want to try and keep it neutral.
But that's the action of the groins getting pulled apart. And then I'm fighting against it with my other hand.
Might be in your body, but not necessarily in everybody's body, so just push against me. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's inner leg pulling apart.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Because the external rotation habit is strong in most, right, which it is in you for like back bends and stuff, then we really think about an internal rotation to keep us from externally rotating, right? And some people, like you might fall into that habit, it just depends on the ball of the leg. Yeah. The heels might be stronger than this. And then bring those thighs together and then slowly, slowly lower the right leg. And if it pulls, then you bend the knee, but the left leg doesn't move at all. It just stays stable. Pelvis doesn't move, back doesn't move, and then we're going to internally and externally rotate that left leg when we arrive as we continue to pull it down into the hip. So I've got a little brag. Saul started doing double black diamonds. How crazy is that, right? He's 6. It's like a little lunatic in the trees. And it's kind of cute because he's better at skiing than Hudson, which is putting her nose out of whack, but it's so good for him. And then 0 rotation. Take that left leg over the right leg, keeping that thigh away. So imagine your leg is pushing into a wall so that it's not coming to you, but it's trying to get away from you. That's a magic trick, okay? And then take your strap and line it up with your leg like it's a pair of pants, and then pull the leg bone into the hip at that angle and move your groin to your outer trochanter. And then imagine, like remember when we had our feet here and we pulled our feet apart? Now lift up into the outer leg. You can even move your strap a little bit to the right in that right hand if you like, or you can keep it like a pant leg, but you open the book of the leg, and that's how we get the release. And you can even go up and down a little bit here. And this is where, like I said, it's nice, you know, if I have a wall available to me, I would do this with the wall to my right side. Maybe I go a little deeper. And then find a spot to hold. Pull that leg bone into the hip. Move your groin to your outer trochanter. Big, beautiful breaths. Let's go 10 more breaths here, big belly breaths. And the more you pull, the more you push, the more you open, the more release you get, but also the more sensation. So if you want less sensation, you just use less muscles. those 10 breaths are complete. Really, really slowly as you pull the leg bone into the hip. As slow as you can go, you move that left leg towards the left side, pulling into the hip. So you know, the leg bones get either pulled out or pulled into the hip, which often causes us pain. Remember, we're staying away from the body, so with that 90, we go to half our range, and then we pull that leg bone into the hip. And think, open the book of the leg. Big, huge belly breaths here. No lift in that right hip. It's like there's a big, huge, heavy weight on that right hip. And then find the muscles. So your business is to do less.
Oh, was I too high?
Yeah, and then find the muscles.
Okay.
So instead of going as deep as you can, right? And that's your lesson to learn.
Okay.
You do quite a lot less when you find those muscles.
Okay.
Because if you're at your deepest, you're just not going to be able to target those muscles that need to be targeted. You'll just keep overusing the ones, right? Does that kind of make sense? Let's go 5 more big, beautiful breaths right into that hip. And then bring that leg back to center, beautiful. Then release the strap, bend your knee, little half wind remover here. And then that foot comes down, roll off to one side, it doesn't matter which side. You can put a pillow underneath your head, right, for a neutral neck. So you can either use your blanket or your bolster, or a block. A block works great, right? Or some of us like to have their arm as that prop if that feels good on the shoulders. We're going to bring our thighs to a 90. We're going to have our strap available to us. Now, we want to sit this butt into a chair. So if I'm like this, it's not a neutral spine, whereas if I sit my butt into a chair, it's a neutral spine. I'm going to pick up my right leg. I'm going to have it in my ankle, knee, and hip in a nice straight line. I'm going to take that right quad back. I'm going to reach behind me and see if I can grab this foot. You see how active this leg is? It's very, very active. Now, if I can't grab the foot, I'm going to really mindfully put a strap around my ankle and grab it that way. And then I'm going to kick my foot into either my strap or my hand. So the kicking is really important. If I'm kicking, it's resistance. Then I can pull my heel towards my butt. Then I can take my right knee back, right? So this is all stages. Knee is not high up. It's ankle, knee, hip level, right? So I could be doing this with my strap, right? Or my hand. And then if it's available, I could lift up this foot and I could straighten this leg if I wanted to. But kicking, lengthening my quad, knee down a little bit for me, Terry. And it's like straight out. And you should have enough room. If you don't, you can just come to the back of your mat. I know it feels weird to have more people in the room, but the capacity is 34. And we never do more than 20. And I don't know a single other studio in town that doesn't go to full capacity. Just is what it is. But it does take a little bit of time to adjust. But you can always find space, find moving back, by one person going up, one person going down, whatever you need to do. Got all this room in the middle. Let's go 10 more breaths here. Again, just going to where it's comfy for you. We should never feel our knee. Neutral rotation in the foot. A lot of us lift that toe up, find that neutral foot.
Sorry, Michelle, are you grabbing at the ankle or onto the...
Some people will grab at the foot. I go for the ankle, but if you can't get the ankle, just go for the foot. Either works. Yeah, it's a 1 for sure. And then release, bring the leg around, bend both knees, give that a wee little rest. So that's a quad stretch, so that would be like the third culprit for filling the knees. And then when you're ready, you're gonna come up and we're gonna do the other side. Roll over if that works for you. So again, you can use a pillow or your arm, but you wanna try to have a neutral neck, and then you wanna sit your butt of that top butt into a chair so that you're not imprinting on that right side, but you've got a nice neutral spine. Start with your legs at a 90-degree angle, ankles, knees, and hips stacked. Pick up that left leg, take that left leg back. If you can't grab the foot or the ankle, then you can use the strap. Bring it forward, get the strap. Look at your foot. So a lot of us, especially if we're tight in that area, we lose the foot, like it's not neutral and wrinkle free, and then we bring it back, and we want the ankle, the knee, and the hip to be level, right? And then you have to kick. So if you're not kicking, there's no resistance, then there's that, then you're gonna lose that healing effect that we talk about using the muscles. So if you can't kick, you do less. You take the strap and you loosen it so that you're a little further away with the foot. But if you are kicking, you lengthen the quad towards the knee. Like a hot iron is ironing your quad away from your hip flexor. You imagine that the back of the knee is moving towards the kneecap, and the kneecap is pushing back onto the back of the knee. And then if you're able to keep kicking, you pull your heel towards the butt. And then if it's still comfy, you just take the whole quad back. And if you wanted to, you could straighten that right leg like you're gonna do a kick, right? So you're at a 90, you just lift that foot, and it's like a shin lift. And you just breathe. Big, beautiful breaths. And there's no pain at all. You can feel the quad, you can feel it like not like pulling into the knee, like a stretch, like a release, but there's no pain. There's a big difference between something that's sharp and painful, right? There's a big difference between a little bit of stretch and a lot of stretch. And then just big old breaths. And if this is a spot for you, which is it for people, that's why we do so many lunges. And so then pre-activity, bang out some lunges. You know how we do those lunges on a chair? That's for people that have tight quads. When they hike the mountain, there's usually a piece of wood or a bench or a picnic table, and then they can do those quad stretches mid-hike, mid-bike, mid-run, mid-ski, pre-post, whatever. Let's take 10 more big, beautiful breaths here. Keep on kicking, keep on lengthening. This feels more like an imprint because it's a little bit like a back bend. So instead of thinking of a back bend, you think of an imprint of the low back. And that's how we really get that psoas to release. And you can do this in a standing position too. It's just usually you can't get as deep because balance, right? When those 10 breaths are complete, release, bend both knees, take a moment there. And then prepare yourself for Shavasana. Any Shavasana you fancy. You want to do legs up the wall, you can. Your knees are sensitive, or your back is sensitive, a bolster underneath the hamstring knees is really nice. Or whatever you fancy. The other thing that's really, really, really good for joints is contrast therapy, and that's going from extreme hot to extreme cold for as long as you can, as many times as you can. So a nice place to do that. I really like the Grand Pacific, and I really like Oak Bay Rec. Oak Bay Rec and Grand Pacific, you can do legs up the wall. You can do this entire routine in a sauna. That's the bomb. And then you would go, I don't go in the pool because once you've like really opened up your pores to go into the pool, it's like, A, it's not cold enough, and B, it's like you're gonna suck up all that chlorine because your pores are all open, so I cold shower. Oak Bay Rec, they've got like in the change room, they've got like a handy shower, so you can really get the coldest water right on that joint that's tweaky. And during the day, it's usually not very busy at either place. Epsom salt baths can be really good too. But that's for me more muscular than it is jointy. And then when you're ready, very slowly, very gently, start to wake up your body from the inside by deepening your breath. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. With a nice big inhale, stretch your arms. Exhale to let your arms fall down heavy. As you start to bend your knees, walk your feet towards your seat. Exhale to roll off to one side, push yourself up, coming into a nice comfy seated position. So one little thing, my intention is to start to teach Kabbalah, which is on sunny days with the windows open. If you're not comfortable with that, just email me. I don't have to teach it, but I wouldn't mind teaching it. We haven't taught it in 3 years, and I do think it's useful, but I can teach it privately or online. So if you're not comfy with that, I'd rather you just let me know, okay? We won't start for another 2 weeks. You got lots of time to think about it. Hands come into Namaskara. Let's bring our hands into prayer position. Take a big inhale and with 3 big group ohms, low, medium, and high. May we use this class so that all beings may find happiness. May we all be free of disease. May we see what is auspicious, and may no one suffer. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti He. Peace, peace, peace. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your practice. Namaste. Namaste, everybody. Bye, everybody in Zoom land. Who didn't have 2 bolsters? I just want to know how many I need. You had 2. Anybody else not have 2? I didn't have 2. So 1, 2, 3 people had blocks, and everyone else had 2 bolsters.
I had one.
You had blocks of 4 people. I know I have 2 at home. Can you do me 2 of the big ones? Because Wednesday night they're fighting over the big bolsters.
Yeah, we can do 2 more.
Thank you.
Alright. two big ones and privacy ones?
No, I have some at home.
Okay, so you got some.
I left them at a private client's house because I just didn't want to schlep them. But now that we're getting more close to capacity, I know I have 2 at home. So just 2 big ones, and then I have 4 big ones for Wednesday night, which is perfect.
Alright, so we might have to make a big one for this chalet.
I'm down with that. No one will complain about that. Gray or navy?